Okay, thanks for having me here. I'm going to address the effects of Brexit on government procurement. I'm going to deal with one possible outcome in Brexit first, and the most important one, which is the so-called hard Brexit outcome, or the no deal outcome. In that situation, there'll be in that situation, there'll be no replacement agreement between the UK and the EU 27. That's what everyone refers to as hard Brexit. That's the extreme position, but that's what I'm going to discuss today. The conventional wisdom is that in that situation, UK-EU trade will be regulated by WTO rules. So effectively, there'll be a replacement of EU law with WTO law. That's the conventional wisdom. And we have a pretty good sense of what that means for standard international trade if that happens. So German car exporters will pay WTO level tariffs when they export their cars to the UK. In technical terms, in legal technical terms, what's happening is the EU free movement rules, so Article 30 of the TFEU, will be replaced by the equivalent WTO rules, Article 2 of the GATT. So you go from an EU rule which says that customs duties are prohibited to a WTO rule that says customs duties can't exceed something called the WTO tariff binding. So that's the way it works for goods. Similarly for services, UK banks will no longer be able to offer cross-border services. As a matter of treaty, they won't have a treaty right to offer that to French consumers. In technical terms, in legal technical terms, what is happening there is that the EU MiFID directive is being replaced by Article 16 of the GATS. So the EU rules allow for passporting, while the WTO rules actually effectively require local presence. So that's the picture if you have this replacement from of WTO rules to EU rules. But what I'm going to look at is, does this picture hold true for procurement? So does the same sort of analysis apply in procurement markets? So is it a situation where EU rules will be replaced by the WTO GPA? And I'm going to address two broad topics. The first question is a question of process. Is it correct that you'll have this sort of smooth transition from the EU law on government procurement to the GPA? And the second question is really a question of substance, which is how different are the WTO rules from the EU rules in practice? And I emphasize in practice for reasons that I'll explain in a bit. So let's start with the first question, the question of process, whether you will have a smooth transition from EU law to WTO law. Will WTO law apply here? I think there are two clumps of issues that we should keep separate, but you have to go through both of them. The first set of issues are the general issue of the UK's membership of the WTO, leaving aside the GPA-specific issues. So the first question is, will the UK transition smoothly from an EU member state to a WTO member state with full WTO rights and obligations? How will that work? It's only if you cross that barrier that you then ask the GPA-specific questions. So you have to understand both debates. And on the first debate, by now, I think there's a pretty good sense of the range of possible views, and I'll just set them out. And it's, the legal community, certainly in London, has really acquired a pretty sophisticated understanding of these issues, but I'll set it out in any event. The starting point is the UK is a WTO member in its own right, because the WTO agreement is, to use EU technical terms, a mixed agreement. But there's a difficulty in that the UK doesn't have its own schedules. As you all know, schedules are additional pieces of treaty text which set out specific commitments. The WTO agreements assume that each WTO member has its schedules, but this is missing for the UK. So we have a gap, we have a problem. And the path of how you solve this problem, in general WTO terms, there are three views right now. first extreme view is that the UK can only get its own schedules if every other WTO member agrees under consensus. And until it gets its own schedules, until it passes that consensus threshold, its trade won't be protected. So I call this the quasi-accession view. It's effectively, for practical purposes, although it's a mixed agreement, if you agree to this view, it's like the UK is acceding to the WTO afresh. This is the first view. The second view, the other extreme view, is that nothing really needs to be done. The UK's schedules are actually already there. They exist. They're within the EU 28's schedules right now. And it's simply a matter of legal interpretation. To stare at the EU 28 schedules for long enough, and you'll miraculously come up with the UK schedule. I call this the no difference view. It's articulated best by Lauren Bartels, who's a WTO academic. That's the second view. And the third view, it's an in-between view, is that there need to be negotiations, but they're quite discrete, the scope of those negotiations. They only involve very discrete questions of agricultural and market access and how you divide up something called tariff rate quotas for agricultural goods. And even if there's no agreement, the UK can proceed unilaterally under something called Article 28 of the GATT to modify its schedules. So there's this range of views. There are various variants within this. My sense, for what it's worth, is that it's probably the intermediate view that will prevail. But we have to recognize that this is uncharted territory. It's international institutional law for which we don't really have a good, clear answer, and much will depend on how the economic diplomacy occurs in the WTO. So there are significant legal and diplomatic uncertainties here. But I think the assumption is, both diplomatically and legally, at the moment, it looks like it will be a smooth transition for the UK into its position as a full WTO member with WTO protection for its exports. That does not address the particular question that we're supposed to address today, which is what happens to the GPA, because it's not automatic. As you all know, the GPA is a plurilateral agreement, and not all WTO members have to be members. So there are two GPA-specific complexities on top of the picture I've already given. So assuming we get into this position where the UK is a full WTO member, the first is that the UK is not a GPA member in its own right. So although, as far as the WTO agreements, the agreements establishing the WTO are concerned, that's a mixed agreement, which the UK individually acceded to in 1995. That's not true for the GPA. So it's only a member of the GPA by virtue of its status as an EU member state. So that's one complexity. Does this make a huge difference? This fact, this change? My sense is it probably doesn't. And I think we should step away from the law for a minute and just think of it in terms of trade policy terms. Whose interest is it? Who has any interest in blocking UK accession to the GPA? Certainly not third countries such as Canada and the US, because they've already agreed to certain commitments on the assumption that they'll be able to access the UK market as part of the EU market. So they've got an offensive market interest in maintaining UK membership. It's no interest for them blocking it. It's not in the EU 27's interest to prevent UK accession to the GPA, because actually the EU has offered that access to its trading partners in order to get a particular deal. It's already offered UK access. If suddenly the UK, all those entities disappear from the schedule, the EU's promised more than it can deliver. So there's also a negotiating imbalance that it doesn't have any interest in trade policy terms, I suggest. So So that leaves the UK. Now, although during the campaign there were noises from certain sections that it would be a wonderful thing to get rid of government procurement, I don't think it's in the UK's long-term trade policy interest not to regularize its position in the GPA, because it faces a delicate WTO negotiation at any rate, whichever view you take. And to add this particular complexity into the mix, to say, well, we're going to accede to the rest of the agreements, we want full WTO protection, we're negotiating our tariff rate quotas on agriculture, but hang on, we're not going to give you GPA market access, we're going to change that. That's just creating difficulties that it really doesn't need. So I doubt it's in its trade policy interests. So that's my sense as a matter of trade policy. If that's correct, it should be able to work itself out under the GPA. You should be able to quite easily conclude that negotiation. We shouldn't have much of a difficulty. There may be timing issues, it may be caught up with the other stuff, but it seems that there is a pretty clear path here. There are other arguments in legal terms of how you can accomplish this, which are not pure trade policy arguments. I appreciate my arguments are not legal. Lauren Bartels has come up with a state succession argument, that the UK would be treated as a successor state to the former EU28, as I gather, and for good measure, he's added an estoppel argument there. That's worth looking into, but probably you can avoid that if you simply sign a piece of paper acceding to the GPA. So the first complexity about not being a mixed agreement, I think this is sort of the answer to it. There is a second complexity, and it's a pretty obscure one, which is there's never been a negotiation between the EU27 and the UK about their procurement markets. And one way of understanding this is if you look at the EU28 schedule, its GPA schedule, you see that it has asterisks and double asterisks, where it's conditioning its offer on a non-MFN basis. And it says for certain countries, we will not give you full access to the entities marked with asterisks or double asterisks. So what's happening there is that the EU is saying the negotiation that it's had in the GPA with certain countries, the United States and Japan, the offers that it's had in return are not good enough, and it's modulating its offer. It's modulating the coverage of its entities. Ask yourself the question, what is the offer it is going to give the UK? It doesn't know that. So there is a slight discussion that has to be had between the UK and the EU27 about where exactly within the EU27 successor schedule does the UK fit. I think this is probably theoretical, because you should be able to avoid hard Brexit and have a procurement chapter quite easily in an RTA. But if you don't, there's a slight discussion, and that's the second complexity. So that's just on the process point. And those are the range of issues. I'll briefly talk about the substance here. How much difference will it make if you move away from EU law and you end up with WTO law? There will be definitely differences in scope. In particular, defense. Defense is not covered in the EU schedule. If you see Note 4 to Annex 1. Similarly, private utilities are not covered, unlike EU law, because Article 2.2a2 says not procured with a view to commercial sale or resale. So there are differences in coverage there. There's also a question about concessions, but that's not as clear-cut, I think. There's a bit of controversy in WTO law where the concession agreements are covered. In terms of the substance of the rules, there is considerable overlap between the GPA and EU law. And in general terms, WTO law, the GPA, is less constraining and less detailed than EU law, but I wouldn't read too much into it. I think in substance you're looking at very comparable regimes. I think there will be one difference, which is in terms of interpretation. It's very difficult to compare the ECJ and that teleological approach to interpretation to what you're going to get, although there's been hardly any case law, but there is a big difference between how the appellate body will look at these questions and how the ECJ will look at these questions. The ECJ has got a very active single market imperative, and procurement plays a big role in a way that WTO is not used to thinking of these questions. For the WTO, this is a market access bargain, and this is part of that. It's part of standard trade policy. It's a carve out in Article 3 from national treatment, and that's traditionally how it's been looked upon. And in any event, the WTO is as far away, if you look at international judicial resolution, as you can get from the ECJ. It is really a philosophically very different tribunal. So in terms of what to watch out for, in practice, how these rules are interpreted, these open-ended rules are interpreted, that will change if your only constraint is the WTO. That concludes what I have to say.